What is up, everybody? Ryan Fournier here. We are here on the RF angle. I want to talk to you guys. I've got so many questions that have come in, along with plethora of emails on new allegations of voter fraud in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, all across the country, quite frankly. Emails of people's stories, how they were turned away at the voting booth in Pennsylvania. A couple that's a close friend of ours went out on election day to vote November 3rd, and they were told that they'd requested a mail-in ballot when they in fact did not. A couple of theirs who lives in the same neighborhood, they all vote together, had a very similar issue. One couple was allowed a provisional ballot to which they could go fill out. Another couple was not. I'm not sure of the circumstances of that. We turn that over to the Trump campaign, and that's another piece within their litigation. But this is happening across the country, and it's very important that we highlight these things. But, I wanted to touch on the basics right now. I wanted to touch on the basics of what is going on. The media declared Biden to be the winner, right? They projected him to be the winner. Well, let me ask you this. Nowhere in the Constitution, unless this is some national treasure invisible ink on the back of the Declaration of Independence type thing, does it say that the media chooses who the president is. Nowhere. And if you're watching this, please share this video because we're going to get deep into this stuff. Their claims that he won is a formality. It's not 100% correct because the media does not declare who the president of the United States is. Doesn't happen. Commentators across this country, CNN, CBS, Anderson Cooper called the president an obese turtle, attacking, criticizing this president for what they like to call delegitimizing electoral system. That is what they're accusing him of, mainly because he went out and he declared victory prior to all the votes being counted. But if you remember on election night, the president was up in every single state and the president was winning, was he not? When I was in the Trump International that night, right before I left to go to bed, the president was up by huge margins. They closed the polls. They stopped counting ballots, which was interesting to me because you don't start, it's once every 4 years that you have to do this. Why would you stop counting ballots? And then we wake up and Joe Biden is up in every single state that Trump was up, right? What's important to note here, why this is good for democracy, what President Trump is doing. President Trump has not called out military. He's not called out militias. He's not told his supporters to take to the streets and burn down buildings and riot their communities. He has told his supporters that he has valid concerns of illegitimacy in terms of ballots and voter fraud across the United States of America. And if these claims turn out to be true, and I can't imagine why they wouldn't be true, this will be one of the largest frauds perpetuated on American soil with voters. One of the largest frauds. The former governor of Illinois, Rob Gabinovich, I'm probably pronouncing his name terribly wrong. I haven't heard it or looked at it in a while. He was on a Newsmax interview yesterday, and he claimed, and I encourage you all to look this up, former governor arrested, put in jail for trying to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat. He said in a Newsmax interview yesterday, I've worked in Democrat politics my entire life. I know of the corruption in cities like Detroit and Pennsylvania. It is so systematic that you couldn't pick it up or catch on to it if you wanted to because it's ingrained in the processes there. It is a normalcy. And he said that, being a former Democrat, worked in the system his entire life. He was pardoned by the president. To the contrary of what the media is saying, in this country right now, they are saying that Trump is attacking democracy. They are saying that the president is acting like a fraud. He's acting like a sore loser. They're calling him all of these things, but that is to the contrary. He is calling on the courts to vindicate his claims. He's not calling for supporters to take to the streets with long arms or go shooting or burning down your cities or looting the Nike store for the newest pair of Yeezys. He's going out there and making claims that are irrefutable And I've seen some of the evidence. You, the viewer, have seen some of the evidence. And it is startling to me how the media will just pass it up like there's nothing to see here. It's like Joe Biden going on stage in Wisconsin and saying he's in North Carolina. But if Trump were to do that once, right, they'd say the media would say he has Alzheimer's and dementia. They would say he has both of them. Joe Biden does it. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here, folks. This is what I'm talking about. The media is on the side of the Democrats 100% of the time. And if you don't see this by now in these last 4 years, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. If there turns out to be voter fraud, though, and Trump concedes, or Trump doesn't concede, right? Let's say this is a fair loss. I expect everyone, and I would say this for myself, and I believe everyone feels this way. If we knew that this was a fair loss and that there was no voter fraud whatsoever, no irregularities, let's say this is a perfect world situation and none of that stuff existed, then I think all of us would walk away, say we took the L and move on, campaign again in 4 years, because Trump's not going anywhere. He's the leader of the party. If he doesn't win it now, he's going to win in 2024, right? He's going to run, he's going to win in 2024. That is my prediction. But we could take a loss. But that's not the point of this. The point of this is that there is irrefutable claims that there is voter fraud happening in this country, with mail-in ballots being backdated by the Postal Service in key swing states, uncovered by Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, backdating ballots that were late. They shouldn't have been counted in the first place, backdating ballots by the alleged thousands, which could easily flip an election because it's not Republicans that were sending in these ballots en masse. It was Democrats. Then you have change of address red flags in Georgia. We just posted about it yesterday on the RF Angle. 132,000 change of address flags. I encourage you, go to rfangle.com. It's the latest top story in the state of Georgia, Fulton County. These are just some of them. The evidence is surpassing. But I will say another thing here. If you want the American people in this country to accept the 70 plus million people who voted for Trump, right? If you want them to accept the outcome of this election, the Democrats would honor what the president is doing. They would say, you know what? He's right. There does look like there's some irregularities. Let's wait for the court to figure out. Because right now, the president has no plan to concede. It's not in the vocabulary of the campaign. And I commend him. The Senate Majority Leader commends him. Every Republican in this party who cares about this president, who cares about this country, supports what the president is doing. How do you expect 70 plus million people who voted for him to just trust the system, to just trust the process when it's stuff like this that is coming up each and every day? They're not going to walk away from this. They're not going to give up on it unless it's proven that, of course, these certain irregularities or whatever wouldn't have flipped the election, whatever the case may be. But I wanted to go over a couple things here on how he can still win the presidency, because this is key. Now, there's three things, right? Number one is in the court. Now, we saw this in 2000, Al Gore, for 35, 36, 37 something days. He believed he was president of the United States, and so did the media. Again, the media declared him president, right? He believed he was going to be the president. America believed he was going to be the president until the Supreme Court said no more recounts, and it stopped recounts in the state of Florida. Now, at that point in time, Al Gore didn't challenge it. He just walked away. Case closed, right? Let me talk to you about the official process here, and I'm going to really simplify this because otherwise you can go on for days. The process of conceding is not in the Constitution. It's not in any sort of document of the government. Conceding is a formality that has been done time and time again, just in respect of the other candidate and respecting the process, right? This situation is 100% different because we've not been in this situation before. 2020, COVID, mass mail-in ballots, never been done before. Close to 80 million sent in across the country. UPS can barely get a birthday card to you in time. How do you expect them to get a mail-in ballot on time to the ballot offices or the places where they're counting these ballots, right? So that's a part number one, is that there is nothing official that the president has to concede the election. And in this case, I commend him for not doing so. So with point one, Trump can win this through the courts. votes can be invalidated, such as in Pennsylvania, Michigan, where we're seeing video evidence, affidavits, written and sworn affidavits, where the person who wrote this could get in legal issue, criminal trouble, quite frankly, if they lied about it. So basically, the courts can throw out those votes. The courts can decide. Now, if it's at the lower level and they decide not to, for whatever reason, it goes to the Supreme Court. We all think, how that's going to go. We all have a good feeling of how that's going to go. They're not going to stand for it, especially if the ballots are illegitimate, if they're past their date of when they were supposed to be there at the ballot counting office. There's a number of change of address, people out voting absentee ballot in another state when they moved, right? Change of address type stuff. These are all red flags. And these are the types of things that the Supreme Court can say, you know what, these votes are illegitimate. We're going to throw them out. The next two that I'm going to get into, and I don't, this is somewhat of a stretch, but I don't want you to think that it's not possible, because they are constitutional, they are legitimate, and they are part of our constitutional structure in this country. And I'm curious to see what people's responses are to this, because I'm watching the comment section as I explain this. So let me get into it. Point 2, the election can go to the House of Representatives. Now, let me kind of touch in on this basis here. This hasn't happened in over 100 years. This is very rare, but it can still happen. If the election goes to the House of Representatives, it is not each delegate that gets a vote. So it's not like AOC gets a vote and Madison Cawthorn gets a vote or Nancy Pelosi gets a vote. It's based on a delegation. So each state has a certain number of congressmen and congresswomen. They will collectively agree together on who or what that vote is going to. So either towards Donald Trump or to Joe Biden. Now, the key here, everyone needs to understand that there are more red states than blue states in this country. There are more red states than there are blue states. So automatically, it will not matter the makeup of the House of Representatives. It will not matter if there's more Democrats in the House than Republicans. It comes down to the states, right? Now, again, what makes it constitutional? It is in the Constitution. It is valid. The people elected those representatives. It is a mandate of theirs if it were to arise. That is important. And I think it would also be ironic to say that the same House of Representatives that voted to impeach Donald J. Trump could be the ones to give him 4 more years in office. That is the second possibility. You can quote me on that, because I actually like that quote. Number 3. Number 3 is a big one. And number 3 differs on whichever state you live in based on what the state legislature has passed over the years. Electors, okay? The electors are a part of the Electoral College, and they are the ones who decide basically who's going to become president. Typically, they go off of the, who is winning these states, the projections of the media, and, the state electors are chosen by the state legislatures. I think what is good here as a sort of a reference point for how this all works is compare an election to a game of baseball, right? You have 9 innings. Well, let's say you have it where, you get someone to the 9th inning and the team that's losing, they haven't done so well. And in the 9th inning, they concede, right? Well, let's change the whole scenario now where your baseball is politics, right? The other innings, you got the primaries, that can be an inning. You have the caucuses, you have the campaigning. All of these can be different innings, right? It's basically where you are in the campaign. And then you have these sort of secret innings, which you get to the 9th inning. That's where the concession is usually in the formality terms. But there's kind of these secret innings at the end. You got like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 innings, right, in politics. Now look at it this way. You have, let's say the 10th inning, you're going to have the process of transitioning. You're going to have the things people really don't talk about. People just wait for inauguration day. Then you're going to have the electoral college stuff. This is kind of the secret stuff that nobody really talks about, but it always happens. It always goes on. You have the state legislators. Now, these laws are different in every single state. I'm trying to explain this in a very simple tone because it is kind of complicated depending on the state. You have it different where, certain laws, the states pick the electors through the state legislature. Republicans control a majority of the state legislatures, and we flipped more in this recent election, I think 2 or 3 across the country, which is another valid question I think people should ask themselves, is how did Joe Biden win more votes than Barack Obama at historic margins, but yet didn't really flip any state legislature seats? And in fact, they lost quite a few across the country, a lot actually. They lost House seats. And they're very close to losing Georgia. I don't think they're going to come out on top in Georgia. How did all of this stuff happen? And Joe Biden gets elected president, right? Well, an overwhelming voter turnout. I mean, the voter turnout is close to what you would see in a country that has national mandates on voting requirements. Like, you have to vote. If you don't vote, you get in trouble, you get fined. That is what it's looking like right now in the United States of America. But yeah, so it is chosen through the legislatures. The legislatures, depending on the state, can decide the electors. You could have Republicans bring in their own electoral slate granted by the state legislatures in these states, and they can challenge the whole entire electoral process. This is possible, all because President Trump has not conceded, right? So all of these things are possible. You're seeing CNN has taken Arizona away from Joe Biden. Now Joe Biden is down to 259 electoral votes. You see that they just took away Pennsylvania. RCP did. An outlet, RCP is a third party, Real Clear Politics, so they aggregate content, but it was taken away, Pennsylvania. So Biden is down to 259 electoral votes technically tonight, making him basically not the president-elect anymore in my eyes. But of course, the media is going to play a game, and you know how it goes. But yeah, so those are the 3 methods as to which President Trump can win this election. Now, there may be more, but those are the most common constitutionally democratic ways that he can win this election. One more thing before we actually get off of here, because I think that this is actually critical, and I wanted to mention this and bring this up tonight, is Ukraine. The State Department, years ago, when there was an election, it was, I think his name was Yanukovych. I'm very bad with pronouncing names. He won this election in this country. He was a terrible president, rigged the whole entire election. But the State Department released a memo on what qualified the Ukrainian elections as rigged. And you guys are going to be absolutely terrified when you hear this, because this sounds a lot like what is happening in this country. Number 1, illegal use of absentee ballots in this country. Illegal use of absentee ballots. Massive electoral fraud was committed through the illegal use of absentee ballot or absentee voter certificates. People were caught in 2 cities with their pockets stuffed with blank absentee ballots they were using to vote at multiple polling stations. You had people going to multiple polling stations, voting twice, 2, 3, 4 times, whatever. Opposition observers were ejected, or there were no opposition observers at all. We're seeing that right now. You had North Korean style turnout in this country. You had numbers that you had never seen before in Ukraine trying to vote in this election. You had mobile ballot box fraud. You had computer data allegedly being offered to favor the guy who won, the guy who rigged the election. And there were credible reports to show that. And then, of course, you had reports of opposition fraud, party members stuffing ballot boxes in Western Ukraine. Incredible. So this is, I don't want to go through the whole thing. It's a lot right here. It's on my Twitter account. I reposted it this morning. So go look at it. It's at Ryan Fournier, my name. This are some of the things that are happening in this country. And those 3 ways are the ways that President Donald J. Trump can still secure this election. Now, everyone needs to keep this in mind as we're moving forward. He is still on a pathway to win Arizona. We're on a pathway to flip Georgia. And we have a very good potential of flipping votes in the state of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So the fight is far from over as far as I'm concerned. And I hope each and every one of you are following me, subscribe to me. Stay on the lookout, because we are going to keep doing videos like this for the rest of the week to keep you guys informed on what's going on. But thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. And if you have any questions, email me, info@ryanfournier.com, info@ryanfournier.com. We will get back to you as soon as possible.